Okay, thanks everyone for hopping on. I'm Rick Gouin. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at the Winslow Technology Group. And over the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you about building a zero trust infrastructure with a little spin towards the Commonwealth of Mass ITC73 contract. As we go through this, please feel free to throw your questions in the chat, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. As a quick note here, we will be donating $25 for each attendee to the Greater Boston Food Bank. An appreciation for you guys spending some time with us here this morning. So for those of you who don't know us, Winslow Technology Group is a solutions provider headquartered out of Waltham, Massachusetts. We've been in business in Eastern Mass here for about 20 years now. We also have offices along the eastern seacoast in New York City, Charlotte, and Washington, D.C. But being that we're headquartered here in Massachusetts, we have a heavy focus on Massachusetts. The company was really born out of providing the best data center solutions available on the market, everything from virtual infrastructure, storage, servers, networking, data protection, backup and restore, all the way to desktops, monitors, laptops, and associated services like asset tagging and warehousing. We've put a strong focus on security solutions, everything from firewalls to penetration testing to vulnerability assessments and beyond. As our industry has moved into the cloud, so have we, with cloud solutions based around private, public, and hybrid architectures. But I think that one of the biggest differentiators for us is our services team. We're able to provide end-to-end technology services on all the various solutions that we provide, including that storage, servers, networking, security, cloud, and beyond. So hopefully we can provide you with a high level of expertise for all of your technical solution needs. So Winslow Technology Group is a designated partner on the Massachusetts ITC73 contract for IT hardware and services. So this means that WTG is authorized to sell those Dell Technologies solutions under a couple of different ITC73 categories. We're able to operate under Category 1, which is your kind of end user compute products such as desktops, laptops, Chromebooks, tablets, stuff like that. We're also able to operate under Category 2, which includes the storage solutions and servers. So we're able to transact under this contract if you're coming from an organization that leverages the ITC73 contract. You can work with us as a designated partner to procure any of those various products and services. And as we go through this today, we want to talk a little bit about how you might be able to leverage this contract to approach a stronger security posture as a part of a road towards a zero trust infrastructure. So let's start a little bit of education. I want to talk, before we dive into zero trust in particular, I want to talk about insider threat. A lot of people think about the reason that zero trust is having this emergence as one of the next great architectures. There's a lot of buzz about this on the internet, and we're seeing every major manufacturer and technology provider start to make moves towards providing solutions that align with a zero trust framework. One of the reasons for zero trust is the attack vectors that can come from the inside. So I want to talk a little bit about folks that may be in your organization that represent a threat to your infrastructure, maybe even unknowingly. So who is an insider? An insider is anyone with access to knowledge or resources, and this is authorized access. So if someone hacks into your environment, they're not an insider. But if you give someone access to those resources, perhaps because they're an employee or a contractor, that's an insider, right? The key differentiator there is authorized access. So, perhaps accountants who you might come in to do audits, those would be examples of insiders. Even though they're not your employees per se, you grant them access to your resources, and that makes them an insider. Vendors too. So, it's not just your IT teams who have authorized access to your systems. If you were to perhaps hire Winslow Technology Group to perform some IT services for you, we would be an insider because you'd be granting us some access. So anyone with access to your knowledge, your resources, your files, your processes, your org chart, just about anything can be considered an insider. So what about threats? How does this relate to threats? I think one of the key things to message here is that not all threats are intentional. Your mind, when you think about an insider threat, your mind jumps to a malicious employee who is doing things, negative things in your environment on purpose, right? But that's not really the source of the greatest threats. When you hear about major data breaches, such as a server being lost or backup tapes falling off a truck, those are unintentional, right? So while a malicious employee is certainly something to worry about and something that the zero trust architecture certainly seeks to minimize, it's really the unintentional risks that a lot of us need to worry about, because you're thinking your coworkers, they're not going to try and do anything bad. Those guys that you work with every day, they're not going to purposefully damage your municipality, not on purpose anyway, right? So the thing to remember here is that these threats, they could just as easily be accidents. So for example, if you've ever thrown some files on a USB drive, you brought them home, did you wipe that USB drive afterwards, or is there still a USB stick sitting in your house somewhere that's got a bunch of files on it? Well, if so, maybe you're an insider threat. If you've ever accidentally deleted a file that you didn't intend to, and then you had to have IT restore it for you from backup, you're an insider threat. At one point and earlier in my career, I accidentally took down a large hedge fund as an employee there. I'm an insider threat. I'm an expert on this stuff, and I'm an insider threat. So you could be an insider threat too. So none of these things happen by accident. None of these things happen on purpose. Another one to consider is where the data is getting copied. For example, if you are emailing yourself files to your perhaps home address to work on later, maybe you're using a free email service, you could be an insider threat. So this is what we're talking about here, is when an employee has access to perhaps sensitive data, whether they know it or not, the level of sensitivity, and they accidentally disclose it via any one of numerous metrics. That's an example of an insider threat. So now I want to bring in this new buzzword, right? Zero trust. We're hearing a lot of different technology solution providers start to talk about the zero trust framework or zero trust architecture. So let's take a step back and talk about what that actually means. Zero trust, as our newest buzzword, is really talking about providing or relying on no implicit trust granted to either assets such as computers or servers or user accounts based on their physical or network location. So if you think about this, in the old days, we would say we'd establish a perimeter around our office, right? The internet comes in, it hits a firewall, and we would kind of assume that anything behind the firewall is safe. So we would give certain preference or certain additional rights to traffic that originated inside the firewall. This is common in many firewall rules. You'd say if it's coming from the inside, it's good. If it's coming from the outside, it's bad. Zero trust removes that paradigm. Think about it. Nowadays, where you have remote workers, where you have so many cloud-based services, where is the perimeter really? If you have half of your workforce working from home, does your perimeter extend around all their homes? Are you able to control what else is on that home network? You might have perhaps a company or a municipality-owned laptop sitting in that worker's home right next to a compromised device. So where is the perimeter? Is it just around that laptop? Is it around that home network? If you're using cloud-based assets, such as something up in AWS or Azure or GCP, maybe you use Microsoft O365, or other hosted email services. Does your perimeter extend to that? So this is why zero trust has become such an important kind of paradigm shift in how we think about things, because we can no longer rely on a secure perimeter. The fact is, our perimeter has become so widespread that it's now impossible to secure. We can't build a firewall around the entire world, and if we did, it would be meaningless. So, this zero trust is really a response to all these enterprise network trends that include remote workers, especially with COVID. That led to an extreme rise in work from home, which led to a lot of architectural differences in securing those users. Bring your own device, cloud-based assets, all this stuff. Where is a perimeter? Zero trust tells us it doesn't matter where the perimeter is. From now on, we protect our resources by assuming everybody might be a bad guy. And that's why the insider threat model or idea plays into this, because this is essentially everybody's giving everybody else the side eye, right? You're looking around your office and everybody's a potential threat. We're no longer trusting people. We're no longer trusting locations. There's no implicit trust granted to any traffic. So one of the things that is kind of foundational to a zero trust architecture is protecting the resources themselves, regardless of where they are. So many firewall rules, many security related rules would be based around subnetworks, network segments, network locations, things like that. Now, instead of trying to protect the network location, we try to protect an application, right? So we would say, how do we lock down email from traffic that comes from anywhere? How do we lock down this application from traffic that comes from anywhere, whether the origination is inside the firewall or out? So mitigating insider threat aligns with the zero trust framework, and I hope that does a good job of explaining what zero trust is, and sort of this is the architectural direction that many companies are taking nowadays. When you bring new applications online, when you start to think about how you're going to secure existing applications, locations, users, or other resources, we're trying to align nowadays with this zero trust framework. Now, NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, they came out with a nice paper. It's 800-207 that defines zero trust from their perspective. It's a really good document. Being from NIST, it's relatively unbiased, so you're not going to find any particular vendor's perspective in there. I'd highly recommend taking a look at that if you want some further reading on zero trust. So when we think about what are the risks, what are your users going to go after? What are the bad guys going to go after, right? What is the target of everything from ransomware to hackers to even accidental, data disclosure? It's all about the data. The data is the honeypot in your company. That is where everybody is trying to get to, both authorized and unauthorized. Nobody cares to have control over a physical box that has nothing in it. They want a physical box that's loaded with your data. So if you think about where the risks are concentrated, those risks are concentrated on your storage systems, on your backup systems, on your secondary offsite copies, your tapes. Wherever your data is concentrated, that's going to be a major target, and also an opportunity for accidental threats. So when the first thing that we sort of talk about when we think about aligning with a zero trust architecture is deploying purpose-built appliances. So instead of creating your own storage environment, creating your own backup appliances, we recommend looking at purpose-built hardened appliances to do those jobs, whether it's a storage array, such as a Dell PowerStore, or a data protection appliance, such as a data domain. These are hardened technology solutions that have a number of security-related certifications to help show that you're doing your due diligence as you build out your environment to provide the highest levels of protection and alignment with a zero trust architecture. In the future, you're going to have audits that are going to ask you these questions. To ensure alignment with those audits, we highly recommend really looking for purpose-built hardened appliances to use in those areas that we know are targets for hackers and are most at risk for insider threat. Now, one of the things that can be challenging, especially in a municipality with, or education with limited, perhaps budget and funding cycles, is knowing where to start and prioritizing your risks. So along those lines, we highly recommend discovering and prioritizing your risks via vulnerability assessments. So in a vulnerability assessment, you'd have a third party, such as Winslow Technology Group, provide a review of your environment. And coming out of that review, we would give you sort of a prioritized list of gaps, if you will, or of vulnerabilities that you could then use to prioritize your budget, to prioritize your spending, to justify costs over time. One of the things we really like is penetration tests. Now, it's funny, a lot of people think that penetration tests are designed to sort of mimic the bad guys and find the holes, right? And then you just patch up the holes and boom, now you're secure. That's not really the point of a penetration test. Yeah, they're going to get in every time. It is very rare that a penetration tester can't find a way into your environment. But the point isn't to find the one hole they use, because guess what? After you fill that up, run another penetration test, they'll find another one. The penetration test is really about ensuring that it's a way to validate your detection and response capabilities. It's a way to tell if your alerting, your alarms, your monitoring went off. Because if you run a penetration test and the bad guys get in, but you're not notified, well, that's the real problem, right? If they're able to steal all your data without you knowing, that's the real problem. It's not about which particular little mouse hole they snuck in through. It's about you knowing that they did it. So think of a penetration test more like you arm your home alarm system and you open the door to make sure it goes off. A penetration test is the opening of the door. How is your alarm system? What kind of shape is that in? That's one of the things we're going to discover via that vulnerability assessment. So in terms of prioritizing these activities, we always say start with a vulnerability assessment. Next, do a penetration test. Part of those is definitely going to call out the level of visibility that your instrumentation has. One of the scariest things for a lot of our municipalities is, can bad guys get data off-site without you knowing? I've worked a number of incidents in the last year or two where the attackers were able to send significant amounts of municipality and education data to different countries with no one knowing. So penetration tests and all of these other focused assessments, test attacks from your wireless, insider threat. What happens if someone loses a laptop full of data? Things like that are great ways to see your relative security posture. And also, these are inexpensive to run, certainly compared to the cost of a breach. So it's a really high value, low cost way to get expert advice. And this is one of our recommendations as you're looking to improve your security postures. Figure out where you stand and get that done by a third party who doesn't have a vested interest, doesn't have, it's nobody's baby, so that you're able to get clear, honest, direct, prioritized feedback. So some of the things to look for as you're evaluating solutions. A STIG. So in when we're talking about cybersecurity and we're talking about products, hardened security products, a STIG is a security technical implementation guide. And what it is essentially a document that lays out a configuration standard to align a particular product with its highest level of security capability. For example, when we talk about securing your most critical data repositories, such as a backup appliance, an archive, or a storage array, you might want to find out if whatever product you're looking at has a STIG available. For example, the Dell Data Domain, which is a great, potentially even air-gapped cyber recovery solution, there's a STIG available, either one of your internal IT guys or Winslow Technology Group can help you go through that STIG, make sure you're applying all the appropriate levels of protection, and come out on the other side with a pretty well validated and secure configuration. Now, FIPS, that's the Federal Information Processing Standards. FIPS 140-2 is about encryption. So if I was looking for data repositories these days, perhaps a storage array, I would be looking for FIPS certified 140-2 data at rest. So we want to make sure that you're using solutions that have these sorts of certifications available for them. So when you're evaluating a storage array, find out if it's compliant with FIPS 140-2. If it's not, move on to the next one. Something like a sweet Dell Power Store is fully FIPS compliant, encrypted storage. That means if somebody steals a hard drive out of that thing and runs, they're not going to be able to get any data off of it at all. In fact, taking one of those hard drives out of that system is equivalent to cryptographically destroying the data. It's completely useless to anybody on the outside. So, keep these in mind. There's a number of qualifications and certifications for these various products, including common criteria, STIG, FIPS, and others. Look for those when you're buying solutions. This is what we're talking about when we say a purpose-built, secured appliance. And the most important place to be concerned with that is your data repositories, such as backup appliances and storage arrays. Again, the data domain and Dell Power Store are both highly secured, highly qualified, and certified to deliver the highest levels of certification in your environment. It's really hard to achieve these levels of certification with the build your own type solutions. Roll in your own storage array, roll in your own backup appliance. You'll have a little bit more peace of mind. You'll sleep a little better at night if you're aligning yourself with these programs. Another thing to just kind of call out here, this comes after working with a number of organizations, many of them municipalities, who have been breached in recent years. Municipalities in the Northeast, we've worked with a bunch of them who have been breached, some of them even within the last week. So yeah, there have been municipalities in Massachusetts breached within the last 7 days, and we're working with them to recover. So I think the key message I want to get across here is, after you get breached is not the time to build relationships and find out who's going to help you afterwards. Put this stuff in place before you get breached. Do you know who you're going to call if you get breached? If you're thinking you're going to figure it out at that time, that's a bad plan. Call those people today. See if they have a retainer kind of based solution where you can kind of get them queued up in case of an incident, or see what their process is for engaging them to help you recover from an incident. So enlist those guys now. Call us now and figure out what you want to do. Have an incident response plan. Municipalities and schools frequently have plans in place for a number of different types of disasters. Rarely is there a good incident response plan in place designed to recover from cyber attacks. And yet they're happening all the time right here in your backyard. You can also consider looking at something like some managed services, light managed services, perhaps to augment your patching program or to help you to keep things like storage arrays up to date. Perhaps something like maybe you're uncomfortable managing your firewalls or reviewing your firewall logs, or maybe you don't have the expertise to really recognize an attack on those fronts. You could get expert ongoing assistance for some of that stuff from a company like WTG. Now, our point here is that we are working on these breaches all the time. I'm helping municipalities in Massachusetts recover all the time. We are working on one right now. So why not leverage that expertise, our experience after recovering from many breaches? So we recommend, and I appreciate you guys hanging on here. I'm just wrapping up. I think this is going to be my last slide, but we recommend a data-driven approach to prioritizing all the various gaps in your environment. And whether we're talking about security or something else, like your virtualization environment, your disaster recovery and business continuity plans, or your feasibility to move different things into the cloud, we provide a whole range of assessments that are free, right? So all of these except the vulnerability assessment are free of charge. Take about an hour. You get one of our experts to go through this with you, and we'll provide at the end a nice deliverable that's going to outline your gaps. It's going to give you a relative score that you can kind of compare to others in your industries, and it's going to come with a list of recommendations to help you improve that posture. Now, since our topic today is zero trust, we do offer a NIST security evaluation where we're actually going to compare your environment to the NIST cybersecurity framework. And coming out of that discussion, we'll, organized by the 5 pillars of the cybersecurity framework, we're going to call out sort of your gap to goal. How far away are you from having a strong security posture in those 5 pillars of the cybersecurity framework? And again, that's a free assessment. Only takes about an hour, and you'll get that prioritized list of recommendations that you can use to help justify costs or to help as you're putting your budgets together for next year. So if something like that is interesting to you, please feel free to mention it in the chat or in the questions, and someone will reach out and set one of those up with one of our security experts. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time today. That's the end of our presentation. If you have any questions, please do enter them in the chat below, and we'll address them. Otherwise, thanks again for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.